Welcome to another rousing edition of Trending Topics with BB. Yes, we are now a podcast. Going to try this out. Seems to be the hip happening thing of technology of recent years. I did a little poll on my Google Plus page a little bit earlier about what you would like me to talk about in this podcast. And it seems to me that interesting, fascinating people of 2014 needs to be discussed as we embark on the last few weeks of 2014. And well, with holidays coming up and with all these different array of lists out there of interesting people to talk about, I am not going to follow Barbara Walters' special coming up this week, not to plug her stuff, but she does it every year, even though she's quote-unquote retired. So let's get down. I have made some few notes of myself, looked at a few lists, and I kind of want to go down and maybe talk about some people that you're not sure could be fascinating, interesting. Let's just go down the road. We've had a very eventful 2014 if you look back at the year. Forbes has listed their 12 youngest powerful people of 2014, and as you imagine, Mark Zuckerberg, CEO of Facebook, is on the list. But could you imagine other people that would be on the 12 youngest powerful people of 2014, and with power being synonymous with, I guess, being rich these days? It's no guess that maybe the CEO of Walmart, Doug McMillon, who's 48, he's number 29 on the list, as well as the vice chair of Samsung in South Korea. He's 46. He's number 35 on the list. Have you heard of these people? Have you seen what they've done? Obviously, power is, kind of a subjective way of putting things these days. But I wanted to bring this up because number 10 on the list is actually David Cameron, who's 48, but he's the Prime Minister of the UK. Now, with all of the recent royal visits to the US, in fact, this guy is actually more powerful than they are. Let's just put it out there. If you disagree with me, we'll do a podcast in the future where you call in or you are my guest and we can hash that out. Yes, I just, knowing history. Anyway, moving on. The CEO of Microsoft, he's on Forbes' list at number 64. And I might butcher his name. I apologize. But Satya Nadella, who is 47. The president of Mexico, which might be maybe a shock to you or not, Enrique Pena Nieto. He's number 60 on the list. So, I'm sure you could Google these people. You can Google Forbes. You can find this yourself. I just want to go on a list of people. They even have the quote-unquote leader of ISIS, who's been wreaking havoc with foreign policy, taking up the airwaves too. As a influential person. I don't know if I'm saying a bad way. Let's move on to some other. Most. I do not want to name who the most obvious, though, of this year. So after that list, Time released their 100 most influential people. And there's anybody from Cristiano Ronaldo, the famous soccer player. He was, mentioned, to Pharrell Williams, the famous music producer, to what Jason Collins did for gay rights and being out as an NBA player, to the whole Edward Snowden thing, to Eric Holder, John Kerry. We could go on the list. Obviously Vladimir Putin should be on the most influential because of his stuff as well this year. And then you can go on to more pop culture with, of course, people were talking about Miley Cyrus and Amy Adams, Pope Francis. So they all come from different how do you say, not well, walks of life, but as well as, just a general sense of influence on a certain amount of people. Obviously, Beyonce was pretty influential this year with everything that she did, in terms of releasing an album, to performances, and all of that. Um, there, I'd have to say that everybody on this list would have an influence. I mean, they're either household names or names you should know. And the interesting thing about this Time 100 most influential people of 2014 list is that each person is written by another person, um, who could be influential, but they put their own take on it. Like, the piece about Pharrell Williams is written by Justin Timberlake, as you can imagine, or Chelsea Clinton writes a beautiful thing about Jason Collins. So I am not going to read their work out here on this podcast for you, but I do want to highlight some of these people and kind of get to that, like Mary Barra, Jeanette Yellen, Travis Kalanick, who was, written beautifully and tributed by Neil Patrick Harris. So as you can tell, there is, and so that's obviously there was a list of people this year that deserve to be recognized and influential, and they're fascinating and interesting people. Everybody in their own right had an influence of something throughout this year. Now, we can go back to pop culture and we can look at People's Magazine's 25 most intriguing people list, and from anywhere to Angelina Jolie, because she is now a director with a movie coming out on Christmas Day in the U.S. Much being talked about Reese Witherspoon and her new, endeavors. I mean, she's her work for Wild and Gone Girl. Chris Pratt being, Guardians of the Galaxy. Matthew McConaughey, the whole Oscar-winning role in Dallas Bar Club, to Jennifer Lawrence in Hunger Games, Lupita Nyong'o for being the people's most beautiful cover girl of the year, Laverne Cox, she made history for Orange is the New Black and being the first openly transgender person to be nominated for an Emmy this year. Jimmy Fallon took over the Tonight Show and is the new king of late night. Tracy Morgan is still currently recovering from his car accident that happened in June. George Clooney actually got married this year, which surprised a lot of people and made other people heartbroken. And we lost one of our great thinkers and minds of, some say, history in Maya Angelou. We also lost Robin Williams this year, along with some other great people. Plus, I guess people also wanted to include the recent, and, I guess it depends on where you stand on the issue of what's going on with whether you agree with police brutality, whether it is police brutality or racial unrest going on within different cities, as well as the whole grand jury verdict from Ferguson and all of that. Everybody has their own opinions based on where they lie. I guess since this is my podcast, I will tread softly on this, but being that I understand both sides, I understood why the grand jury decided the way they did, but that doesn't mean I necessarily agree with their decision. But yet, I was not out there, protesting in a violent way or anything. So, anyway, moving on from that, those are just a few of the lists you can view right now if you probably just Googled intriguing, interesting, or fascinating people. They're, to me, an interesting or fascinating person can be seen in different ways. As you can tell between all the kind of array of lists that I just mentioned, that everybody has different professions, different ways of influencing people, or being intriguing and interesting. I think what is most interesting is that when I mentioned the people we lost, like Maya Angelou or Robin Williams this year, is that basically, you know, where was that coming from? Like, everybody all of a sudden was like, oh, remembers the people they were and how they did impact lives, but this is after the tragedy of their deaths. So, just something to think about. Do we wait to honor their memory, or do we continue to honor their memory, before something tragic happens? And, everybody has their take on that sort of situation. I personally found it kind of interesting, considering, but that's not the first time. I mean, this happened when other celebrities in the past. Another one that comes to the top of my mind is when Michael Jackson passed away. Everybody all of a sudden was like, oh, he was the best. But it was people that wasn't necessarily saying that all the time. It was just the sign of the times. So it's interesting how tragedy brings out tributes when in reality we should tribute people all of the time. So I don't want to mean to bore everybody who's listening to this podcast, but I did want to get this podcast up and running, and to kind of get the discussion about the influential, interesting people of 2014, whether they're in politics, whether they're religious spiritual leaders, whether they're business tycoons, influential, well, I guess people would say terrorists and the whole ISIS thing, and to kind of get your head and mold around about the people that are out there and to focus maybe on what they are. So, with that being said, I want to thank you for listening to this podcast. Again, my name is Brooke Brown, and you can find me at brookandbrown.com. You can share this podcast wherever you would like. I would like to get some discussions going out there, and I once again thank you for tuning in to Trending Topics with BB, and have a wonderful night, day, sleep, whatever you want to call it. Bye-bye.